Welcome back to the OurView Podcast. On today's episode, I welcome my guest, Angelica Medrano. Join our conversation as we discuss her educational consulting, advocacy, and tutoring program, EDU PrepSpace, and also the importance of universal learning. I would like to welcome everybody back to the OurView Podcast, where we aim to raise awareness, educate, and change the tone of conversation about disabilities. I would like to welcome my guest, Angelica Medrano, to the podcast, and I am excited for our conversation today. Thank you for joining us today, Angelica.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here speaking with you.
Yeah, so we are recording this currently on February 26th in the evening, and you and I have shared before we started recording that you are in Texas, where they have experienced some rough weather with the snow and ice and everything there. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to join me today, and glad to hear that you and your family are safe. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, it's been a challenging week, but we are back on track. So
Yes.
very happy to be here today.
Yeah. So to start the episode off, can you just give us a brief introduction of who is Angelica? Just share anything you're willing to share, personal, professional, whatever you'd like to share. Just share that with us at this time.
Okay, sounds good. So my background is in special education. I was in a school district. I began as a teacher, a special education teacher. Now going on that was about 16 years ago. So I started as a special education teacher and worked my way up. I ended up overseeing the special education department. I was at the same school for about 7 years before I transitioned to a district position. So my entire career was based around special education. And at the district level, I was able to see all areas of it, from our early learners, our early childhood education, all the way through high school. So I was able to really see the full spectrum of special education, from the youngest students all the way up to our students that were getting ready to graduate. So that's a little bit of my professional background. I have 3 children, one who does have ADHD, so I am very familiar with disabilities and how those can play a role at home as well as the school. So I'm able to connect with many of my families because I understand. I understand it from the perspective of a parent, as well as the educational piece of it, the teaching piece. I've been in the classroom with students with different disabilities, so I was able to get that perspective as well. So I was, again, with the district for many years before I finally decided that I really wanted to work with families directly and ensure that families understood the process, because special education can be overwhelming. There are so many laws and guidelines and district policies that go along with it. I think for families, just in the beginning, understanding that your child has a disability or a learning difference can be overwhelming. And then you put in all those pieces of, what do I do now with the school? How do I start that process? How do I get support for my child? So I understood that could be difficult for families. So I really wanted to work with them directly and provide my previous experience, my background in public education, and allow families to have that support, that guidance through the process. And so that's pretty much what I've been doing the last 3 years, going on 4, where I've been doing this, working directly with families, doing the advocacy and the consulting piece. I also provide tutoring for students with dyslexia. So I do work one-on-one with some students, and it's been amazing. I mean, just getting to see my students grow and still being able to have my students I interact with, which was a piece that I missed for a while when I went to the district level, when I wasn't in the classroom anymore. So that's been something that's been great so far, just being able to work with different families and working with students.
Oh, that's great. And it's I love that your professional background is in special education, so that led you to what you're currently doing now. And it's important for me. I didn't have special education classes, but I can relate that to other areas of my life with having a disability. And I can't imagine what my parents were were dealing with and like feeling overwhelmed. So for you to have created something new to where you're directly working with the families to let them know the things that are available to them and to assist them along the way, I'm sure is, you know, more than words can say for most of the families of how beneficial that is to them. So it's definitely a much needed service that you're providing for sure. And I know for myself, having a disability, I've said it before on my podcast, I majored in psychology in college because I wanted to help families who have children with disabilities. And I wanted to counsel them because that is something, again, like it's so overwhelming for parents dealing with everything. Um, so I wanted I felt that was missing in my family where we could have benefited from counseling in some way. So, I had the plan to counsel families of those impacted by disability. So the fact that you're using, your educational background and your previous professional background of being in the classroom to now create this space is really great. So can you tell us a little bit about your program, the Edu PrepSpace? Yeah, I loved it.
So, so my business, which is it's EDU PrepSpace.
Hmm.
So, what we do is we provide consulting and advocacy for families, and we try to. I mean, I've been doing this for going on 4 years, and every year I've added some more services, whatever I see that there is a need, because every family that I work with, every student that I work with has individual and unique needs. I try to bring as much of that information to provide more and more services for my families. So some of the things that I do is I will attend meetings with parents. If it's school meeting and they're needing some support and some guidance, they want to understand all the components of it. I attend meetings with them. I work with teachers directly sometimes from some of my students, and we just collaborate on things that I do when I'm tutoring, things that can be done in the classroom. And I am big on sharing resources. So I try to reach out to other professionals in the field, whether they are counselors or therapists or just anyone that is in the field. I like to reach out and just have those resources available to my families, because many times parents don't understand what resources are available. I've had so many families that tell me, I didn't know that music therapy could be offered in school. I didn't
Hmm.
understand that, there was additional things that we can ask for to ensure that my child is being successful in school. I'm also very, very big and on children advocating for themselves and understanding that it's okay to learn differently or do things differently or be different. There's nothing wrong with that. I think many times families have a hard time with that piece of it. Like, how do I tell my child that they have autism or
Right.
ADHD or
Hmm.
dyslexia? And so I really try to find resources for parents to help give them that knowledge, that power to say, it's okay, we can get through this. And it's something that, I mean, personally, I do with my children. As I shared, I have a child with ADHD. It just so happened that I went into the world of special education, and that was prior to having my child. So I understood some of it. I understood some of those pieces, but it was a little bit different coming from being a teacher to now being the parent of a child with ADHD. But I've always been very open with my child. It's something that we talk about in our house all the time, and we understand you may have some challenges that you face, but we focus on the strengths. What are the
Hmm.
things that you are good at? And trying to helping children understand that piece. That's something I do with my students as well when I'm tutoring them. and it's students with typically dyslexia or reading difficulties. So I try to get them to understand that it's okay if you read slower than other students, or you may need more time. We all learn differently. And seeing that confidence grow is something that I just love. I mean, I love when my parents tell me my child's reading a book. Like, what did you do? They're now picking up books. Now they're okay with doing their homework. We're getting really good grades on spelling. You know, these things that were not happening before. But I really feel that it's building that confidence in students and letting them understand that it's okay to learn differently or do things a different way. And there's nothing wrong with that. So that's one of the reasons why I really like to advocate in the schools and help teachers understand that there are ways to teach all children in the classroom, and really being able to reach any child at whatever level they are in the classroom by ensuring that we are doing things in the classroom, the lessons are being built a specific way, and that way they can all experience success. Because I think that's an important piece. When children don't experience success in the classroom, that's when you start to see a lot of issues. I mean, why would I try? Why would I want to be in class when
Right.
I always get a bad grade? I never know the answer. I'm always behind. Everyone else seems to know what they're doing and I don't. So that's one key piece that I try to make sure that the teachers understand and the schools understand, that we have to give them the accommodations that they need in order to be successful.
Yeah, that is so true. It's everybody can learn. It's just everybody learns differently. Again, I've talked about it on my podcast before. I had trouble with math, and it just doesn't come to me. If it's not, 1 + 1, I just never understood it. I could never get it. Statistics in my college courses was, the worst for me. But I was able to get it because I found a way to learn it just differently for myself. And it came from talking to other students in the class who showed me different ways to understand certain things. And it was like, okay, I can understand it enough to pass the class. But it just really takes, it takes getting to know the individual student, I think, is really important to know, uh, their ways and to know how they learn. And so that leads us to our next topic of discussion, which you and I, we've communicated through email over the last few weeks about possible topics. And we settled on the topic of universal design for learning, also known as UDL. And as I explained to you, and for those of you who are listening to the podcast, you may have noticed that in addition to having conversations with people who live with disabilities on a daily basis, I have expanded the content of the podcast to include topics like this one, where just so you can learn about other types of disabilities and different styles of learning, and just different topics in general. So I would love to get into the conversation of universal design for learning, what it is, how it works, and why it is necessary.
So UDL is actually one of my favorite topics. It was one of the trainings that I provided when I was working for the district. It was my favorite one to present to teachers because it goes into everything that we've just discussed, making sure that every student is getting their needs met in the classroom. And that is basically what UDL is. It is the framework and I'm going to read exactly what it says on the website. So it's a framework to improve and optimize teaching and learning for all people based on scientific insight on how humans learn. So it has looked at the different ways that humans learn and put it all into one framework. And it has 3 basic guidelines, which is the why of learning, the what of learning, and the how. And when I would present this training to teachers, we had several different ones. We would present an overview depending on what they needed of just the basics. And then we had a more in-depth presentation where we would actually take lessons, look at them, make sure that they met the UDL guidelines. But in the basic UDL guidelines, you are looking at engagement, which is how is this is the class going to learn this topic? Is it going to be independent work? Is it going to be group work? Are you going to provide choices to the student? And it's really looking at that, making sure that all of your lessons in the classroom are meeting the needs of every child. There are some students that would love to sit alone, finish the work, and they are perfectly fine. I can sit at my desk independently, get my work done, and I'm okay. There are other students who love group work. That is how they're going to learn the most, learn the best, is by collaborating with other students, being able to talk it out. And then you have some students that completely hate that group work, right? There are some students that are like, I do not want to sit in a group and talk to other people. So that's just, it's really making sure that you are offering those choices in a classroom. One of the things that I've seen is choice boards, where if you are presenting whatever it is, if it's, let's say in a reading class where we're reading a story and now we're going to do some reading comprehension. What did you learn from the story? Main idea, characters. You can do a choice board and say you are able to either write a summary. So for the students that are great at writing and really can get those ideas out on paper, that would be good for them. You can also say maybe the group can work together and collaborate and come up with a group piece where you're all collaborating, coming up with ideas, and then presenting something. Something else could be a PowerPoint. If there's a student that may need that technology piece and they're just really good at putting together PowerPoints because they're more visual, and it's really hard for me to write out sentences, but I can put them together in a PowerPoint and give you bullet points, that would be a good option. Maybe you have a student that can draw those out. A student could very much draw out a picture of what that story was about and give you all of those things, characters, main idea, what was the problem, in picture form. So it's really using those different elements, multisensory lessons, so that you are engaging all students, whether they are visual learners, auditory learners. If you need that tactile, they need to draw it out, whatever it is, it's looking at those pieces. The second piece is the representation. And this is, again, the what of learning. How are they going to receive that information? So when I'm presenting my lesson, how am I presenting it to my students? A lot of times teachers will just stand at the front of the room and lecture. And that happens a little bit more with older students, maybe in high school. I think in our earlier years, elementary teachers are a little more hands-on and there's a little more going on. But in high school, we still have students that have different needs. Same as college, right? We had the professor that would stand in front of the room and just lecture. So if you weren't, good at taking notes, or you had your recorder or some way to capture, it's hard. And if you have a student that maybe isn't, again, has maybe some auditory processing issues, so that just hearing it is really difficult for them, they're going to have some problems in that classroom. So it's making sure that we're engaging all the learners. I can stand at the front of the room and give you the information orally while I'm lecturing, but I can also have some slides behind me, so that if, it is easier for you to see the words at the front of the board, and that way you can take the notes. Or, especially now with our phones, right? I wish we had that when I was in college many years ago.
Yes.
You can just take a video, right? Or do the audio, record what the professors
the
are
voice
saying.
memos.
Right. That would have been so helpful. So just those kinds of things, making sure that teachers are representing that information in different ways. One of the things that, is very hands-on is like math, especially for our younger students. Even when we are learning 1 + 1, one student may get it. Oh, I see the numbers on my paper. 1 + 1, that equals 2. Another student may have pictures. 1 apple + 1 apple equals 2. But you may have another student who actually needs to have cubes, right? 1 cube and another cube. Now I can feel these cubes in my hand, and I know that 1 and 1 is 2. So it's giving those multiple ways of representing the lessons and the work, and you're meeting the needs of all the students. And then the last component of it is the action and expression. How are the students going to provide what they learned? How are they going to show what they learned? And that goes back to sort of what I spoke about in the beginning. Are they going to do a PowerPoint? Are they going to create a song about it? I mean, we have students that can, play the piano or play guitar or sing. And those are things that I think are sometimes overlooked in schools. We focus so much on the academic pieces, right? The reading, the math, but there are some students that are gifted in music or in drawing or painting. Those are things that I cannot do. I mean, like you see the guitars in the back. My husband is the one who, I mean, he hears music so differently than I do. I've even said before, I really wish I could hear how it sounds in your head, because sometimes he'll ask me, "Oh, do you hear the guitar here?" And I'm like, yeah, but I know I don't hear it the way. So it's just making sure that we are also finding those strengths in our students. So if it is a student that they excel in that creative space, right? They can draw pictures. Why not allow them to represent what they learned in that way? Because that's how they're going to get out what they learn. And it's probably going to make more sense to them than trying to sit and write notes, right? You ask them for 2 pages on the body system in science class, and they're having to try to write out all of that and recall what they read. But if you ask them to draw it, they may be able to draw that entire representation of the human body and
Right.
give you that exact information that another student may be able to write out or create a PowerPoint or verbally tell you those pieces. So it's just, that's one of the reasons why I love UDL, because it's really looking at how all humans learn, how our brains work. Again, some people just need that visual. I have to write notes. That's how I learn. When
Hmm.
I go to conferences, even when I was in school, I have to write notes. It's just the way my brain recalls information. If I don't write it, it's a lot harder for me to recall. There are some students who can sit in a classroom and just hear that lecture. And many times, this is something that I've seen with students that struggle with focusing. Sometimes students are playing with their pens and doing all this other stuff and moving around, but then you ask them a question and they have heard every single thing that you said and they can answer that question,
Yeah.
although you thought they weren't paying attention. So it's just really finding ways to ensure that our classrooms are set up to meet the needs of all students. The interesting thing about UDL is that the idea of it actually started in architecture, because when they design buildings, they design them so that anyone can access a building. And I think one of the easiest ways to picture this is especially our grocery stores.
Hmm.
So most of them have the automatic doors, right, that open because you're pushing your shopping carts in and out. But when you have that, you are also allowing a person in a wheelchair to come in
Right.
easier, or a parent with a stroller, right? So it's just all of those pieces. When they build spaces, that is what architects look at, and that's where these ideas came from, which I find very interesting, that they were able to take this piece from building spaces and buildings and bring it over into the education space, and ensuring that we can allow access to our lessons to to allow access to all of the students in the classroom, whether it is the student that may need a little more and they're a bit slower at getting the concept, and also targeting some of our gifted students, because we do have students at the other end of the spectrum who may, you say it once or they read it once and they got it. I mean, and they need more. They're going to need more to be challenged in the classroom, and it's meeting the needs of all of those students at one time.
Yeah. I love what you said about just the fact, and we've said it before, that every child, every person learns differently. And this is, we're talking in the context of a classroom, but even as you said, in college, it's, can be applied there, it can be applied in the workplace, it can be applied to, adults. And it's just, it's true. Some people are auditory learners, visual learners, tactile learners, and it's just, making sure that everybody has a little bit of all of that, I think, is very important, because it's like in one area it might benefit me to write everything down, But then in another subject area, it might be beneficial for me to see it. Like with math, I said I had issues with math. I need to see it like written all the way out as far as you can write it out for it to make sense to me. but
Right.
so, but something like a topic that I enjoyed, science or psychology, it's like I can read it once and it makes sense and I can retain that information. So it's a person can learn in multiple different ways. And as you said, the professor standing up or the teacher standing up and giving a lecture is boring, and it goes the time goes very slow for a lot of people in that way. But if they mix it up with some videos or PowerPoint in the background that's saying the same information, it does keep you uh, very interested and helps you learn better. So I really appreciate the explanation of that. And it's interesting to hear that it started in the architect world. That's very cool. Very cool to learn that. So thank you for that conversation. But
Yeah, that's why
yeah.
it's one of my favorite topics, and exactly what you said in terms of how we can apply it outside of the classroom,
Hmm.
just the things that you said right now. And I think with technology and where we're at right now, it's given us a lot more of that ability to access things in different ways. Even for a job interview, we now, obviously, the last year we're on Zoom a lot more. So, just different ways of incorporating this in other places. You may have someone that struggles with interviewing. I know that there are some people that there's so much anxiety that goes in interviewing, but they may be more comfortable if I'm at home and I'm on the computer, even if I am interviewing with a set of 10 people. But just being at home in a familiar place, I'm going to do so much better at that interview versus if I had to come in and, be in the same room as this interview committee. So just, different ways of doing things. And now we have YouTube and all these other things. That's something that I try to incorporate with my students when I work with them as well. We do all of our sessions online now in the last year because of everything that's happened. We do our tutoring sessions online. So I try to make sure that I'm keeping them engaged because sometimes it is hard for a child to sit in front of a computer. So we do videos. I will pull up YouTube videos because exactly what you said, we may be talking about reading, but if they see the commas and the periods and the exclamation as a little cartoon and it's they're seeing this visual representation, it makes so much more sense to them. Or
Right.
if we're reading a story and they're seeing the pictures moving with that story, then it's just it just engages them a little bit different. So I think that there are definitely things that we can bring from UDL and apply them outside of the classroom.
Yeah, that is it's so true that again, every person learns in such a unique way. And just because one method isn't working doesn't mean that it's impossible for them to learn. And it's just trying out different things and trying out a combination of different things in some cases. And it's it's really great and really I'm fascinated by the way that people learn. And as you mentioned, with your husband with music and like hearing certain things and within a musical arrangement, and it's just like, wow, like I wish I could. I love music. It's like my favorite thing, and I I wish I could hear it as deeply and as intently as some other people do. But it's really great to again have this conversation and share this information with everyone listening. And just I think again going back to the parents and just a lot of things, and just life in general can be overwhelming for people in every way and in a lot of ways. So to just remember that you may have to try some things differently and try out a couple of different things before you figure it out. But it is possible for all of your children to learn, and possible for all adults to learn. It goes beyond the regular classroom, and just find out what works for you and yours, and just stick with it until you figure it out. So thank you again for this great knowledge that you're providing for everyone. So to wrap up the conversation, I always try to end with a similar style of this question. I always try to wrap up with um, some type of question that ties everything back together. So, what what do you feel is most misunderstood about those who have disabilities, and learning differences can be a part of that in general, just because I know that's the population you work with.
So I think that one of the things that I've seen in my experience is that, and again, my experience has been in the classroom and schools. I think one of the things that I see most often is that teachers will sometimes have an idea of what they think a disability is. They will think of ADHD a certain way, or autism a certain way, or dyslexia a certain way. And they think that every single one of those children are going to be the same. And I think that's one of the biggest misrepresentations, that even within that disability, every child is unique. So one child with ADHD may not look like another. One child with autism may not look like another. Same with dyslexia. Again, the majority of my students that I work with have dyslexia. My lessons look completely different because I tailor them to each one of my students.
Hmm.
Again, if I have that visual learner, we're going to do a lot more visuals. If I have a child that we need to review things several times, we're going to review that same lesson 2 or 3 or 4 times, whatever they need. So I think that's one of the biggest misrepresentations, that people will assume that they understand or that they know because they've had experience with 1 or 2 children, or people with disabilities. And I think it's understanding that whether you have a disability or not, we're all different, and being
Hmm.
able to adjust our lessons or just adjust the way we're doing things to meet the needs of every individual child. We will meet the needs as long as we are understanding that everyone learns differently. But again, I think that's been one of the biggest misrepresentations, or also not giving the child a chance, just sort of like, well, you have, dyslexia, you're reading so many grade levels below. We were just going to try to do the best we can and move on. And it's like, no, if you really follow the program that you're supposed to and really meet their needs and fill in those gaps that they're missing, they can catch up and they can do exactly what any other student can do. So I think that's been one of the misrepresentations that I've seen, or just things that I've seen throughout schools, is not understanding fully what goes into this, and understanding that everyone is unique, and everyone is different, whether we have a disability or not. We all learn differently.
Right.
um, and understanding that piece, and making sure that you are open to other, or pretty much thinking outside the box. Just because you've done things a certain way and it's worked for other students and now it doesn't work for this one, you don't get stuck on that. Let's think outside the box. Let's think of different ways that we can approach this, and different ways to help students. So I'm always big on finding creative ways. I like solving problems. Like that's one of my things, which is why I liked working for the district, because when there was an issue, I was like, okay, we're going to figure this out. Let's figure out how to help this student. Let's figure out how to help this school. And it's thinking outside the box, being creative, making sure that we're meeting the needs of everyone that we come into contact with in a school.
Yeah, that is very, very well said. And thinking outside of the box is so important in every way, in so many different ways. And not putting, I think, also not putting the child into a box of saying, because you have dyslexia or some other diagnosis, you can only do this and can only have, not to put limits on the child because of a particular diagnosis is so important. Because as I said, I don't have a learning disability, but it has been, it's been done to me as a child and even as an adult with a physical disability, to be put into certain boxes of, oh, you can only do this or you can only do that type of type of work, for example, when I can do so much more. But again, treating people as individuals, and just because you heard of or have interacted with, worked with someone else who has the same diagnosis, it's different for everybody. I can never stress that enough. That and as you said, people with and without disabilities, we're all unique in every way. So it's important to just treat everybody as their own individual person, I think is a great message to spread. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time again today. I appreciate it. And I truly enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot. And I know my listeners will have learned a lot. And can you just share with everyone where they can find you online, if your website, your social media sites, and how they can get in contact with you?
So thank you so much for having me. This
Yeah.
was great. I really loved being a part of this. So people can find me on my website, which is www.eduprepspace.com. They can also find me on Facebook and Instagram, same handle, eduprepspace.com. And again, I am always happy to talk to families or other individuals in the field. I love being able to have all of the resources. I never stop learning. I mean, every day, I've done this for years, and I tell parents all the time, my child has ADHD. My husband has ADHD. I've worked in this field for a long time, and every day I learn something new about ADHD. So I
Mm-hmm.
love learning. And again, as many resources as I can have for families, I'm happy to share those. So if anyone has any questions, I know I'm in Texas, but again, special education law is across the United States. All states have to abide by it. And I do know other people in other states, so I'm always happy to connect people if they need someone in their state, if they need assistance with anything with the school system.
That's great. Again, I truly appreciate your time. Your passion shows through your conversation here today and through your great Instagram page. I love the content and everything. So, and I love what you said about, although you're in Texas, you know other people in different states. So you can be a great resource for other people to connect them with people who are closer geographically to them throughout the country, and just being there to offer the support that many families need. And I think, again, that's why I have chosen to expand the content of this podcast to include people like yourselves, because it's very difficult at times having a family that is impacted with a disability and a learning disability, and it's difficult to find resources that are available. They are out there. There are many that are out there, and they provide great services, but at times it's very difficult to locate them and find them. So to have someone like you providing this service is very much needed and appreciated. So Angelica, thank you for your time, and I appreciate it, and definitely will be keeping in touch with you and hopefully collaborating with you again in the future.
Thank you so much. And yes, I look forward to collaborating with you as well. You're doing amazing work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. But you enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the OurView Podcast. Leave us a review wherever you listen and let us know what you liked about this episode. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to follow us on all social media platforms for more disability-related content at OurView for Life. That's OurView, the number 4, LIFE. If you listen to this episode on your phone, take a screenshot and post it to your Instagram or Facebook stories and be sure to tag us. We thank you for listening and take care.